what I've seen so far, I was actually positively surprised. So we as the people can have that power and can take our power back, that's for sure. Hola and buen dia from Tulum. So I wanted to give you a little bit more information on how it is to travel internationally, specifically from the US to Mexico during COVID times. And I just wanted to explain to you the things I encountered and what I've experienced so far. So a little bit of background, I have been in Tulum for more than a week. Initially I had only planned on being here for maybe 4 days, but then I ended up liking it so much that I extended my stay. And then in between we had the entire hurricane tropical storm mess. So see that video, I'll link it below for sure. However, nonetheless, I really had a great time here in Tulum, I have to say, and I just wanted to give you a few tips and just my impressions overall. I will have more videos on the Cenotes, on Chichen Itza, on Coba, and also a few other tours that I've taken. After Tulum, I'm actually going to go to some islands, and I heard the restrictions on those islands, the measurements they're taking are a little bit more strict than in Tulum. So this is specifically just talking about Tulum and what I've experienced so far. Alright, first things first, how was the flight? The flight itself was actually, I have to say, one of the best flights I've ever had when flying internationally. Why is that? Because there were literally almost no people in my terminal, so I flew from JFK to Cancun directly. I didn't stop anywhere in between. It was a non-stop flight, direct flight. To be honest with you, the terminal was almost empty. You know, if you want to wear a mask, obviously you were told you need to wear a mask, but however, I also saw people who just like put it below their face, like below their mouth and those kind of things. Not on the airplane, but actually when going from the check-in counter through the security to their terminal. So I think, you know, even perhaps the airlines or the airports themselves have become a little bit more lenient on that matter too. I even saw a security guy who wasn't wearing a mask, like full on, is just walking around without a mask. So I'm not sure if he had an exemption, like with a health exemption or something. But it was actually really nice to see, you know, like the amount of people who were kind of just against that, let's put it that way. Another thing I really wanted to mention is the entry requirement to Mexico, by the way, is no nasal swab, no testing, and no quarantine. So for me, that was the decisive factor to go there, as opposed to Egypt, which I had also considered, where they do want you to do a test and all of those things, because people have asked me about that, and the no quarantine actually also facilitates things greatly. All they ask you is like on a separate form whether or not you've had the symptoms and all of that stuff. I do have to say Tulum itself is like quite sticky and yeah, super humid at this point in time. So around this time in October, it was really humid, really sticky. Probably also due to the storms we had, but yeah, I can already tell like I'm sweating just for recording this. So yes, you need to wear a mask obviously when you want to enter your plane. You need to wear a mask when let's just say you want to go from the security to the terminal, but however, I also saw people, like plenty of people, who actually weren't wearing their mask the entire time, myself included obviously, because you know my stance on that. And there weren't really that many reinforcements about it, so I actually had more reinforcements on the MTA, on the New York City subway, than I did in JFK, in the airport itself, which that was amazing. So that was definitely a plus. Now, going onto the plane, I did have my mask like below my nose, and I was asked by a flight attendant if I could put it over my nose, the same with the person who was behind me. So I'm not the only person who's bothered by this mask thing, I can already tell. However, then I also saw a woman with a child, so she had a baby, a new mother, who wasn't wearing it over her nose, and she wasn't asked anything. So I guess if you want to do it without having your mask over your nose, just bring a newborn onto the plane and you'll be good to go, because she wasn't wearing it over her nose for the entire duration of the flight either, and not a single flight attendant actually asked her to do that. So definitely a way to get around of it, I believe. I myself wasn't wearing it over my nose the entire flight either, so I wasn't necessarily asked 24/7 to keep it over my nose, and it was really nice because they did serve like snacks twice. where I was just putting it off for like a duration of 30 minutes straight because I was eating so slowly, eating so slowly. So for a flight that was originally like 4 hours straight, it actually wasn't that bad. Now, no one was actually sitting next to me, so they definitely had that social distancing where, it was me, no one next to me, and possibly there was supposed to sit another person right next to that, but I had an entire row by myself. That was great. So my impression personally was when I flew during the week that there weren't that many people who were actually flying. However, I met a person who flew on the weekend, so literally like 4 days later, I think it was on a Thursday or Friday, and I asked them because they flew from the same airport, so JFK to Cancun, and they were like, yeah, the terminal itself, the international terminal, is actually quite crowded. The flight itself, they still did the social distancing thing, but it wasn't like the same experience I had. So I'm just wondering if it has to do with you flying during the week or on the weekend. I don't know. We're talking about October here, so I still think, considering that COVID broke out in March or February, 6-7 months later, you're still having like half-empty flights. I think that's really good for someone like me who's used to like super crowded, slam-packed flights, and it was definitely a very welcome exchange, or just a very welcome variation of what I was used to. Now, back to having to wearing masks in Mexico. So Mexico itself, I have to say, if you are freaked out because they're not taking like enough COVID measures, if you are a person who believes in the hand sanitizer, if you are a person who believes in wearing a mask 24/7, you are absolutely able to do that here. Like, no worries about that, okay? So you can sleep with your mask, you can use your hand sanitizer 24/7, and all of those things. So Mexico itself is actually really good in enforcing that, I have to say. Now, for me personally, when I drive in, when I take colectivos, when I ride in shuttles from the airport to my hotel, those kind of things, I did wear my mask. I have to say that because I wanted to be respectful of the people around me who I was riding with. I could tell they were freaking out if a person wasn't necessarily wearing their mask and those kind of things. So just out of courtesy, and also mentioned that in my Cenote video, out of courtesy for the country, I did wear my mask, not necessarily over my nose, so I did have to breathe somehow. I also have to say, as you can already tell in this video, it's really, really hot. It's extremely hot in Tulum right now. And wearing that thing on your face the entire time, I think you really need to be used to that in order to do that. So it is extremely hot and extremely humid. And I do have to say, just because of this current time of the year, I would say around 50% or 60% on the streets in Tulum, so just in Tulum, not in Cancun, not in Playa del Carmen, which I'll go to next, so I'll give you a report on that, weren't wearing their masks, like completely maskless. However, then the other rest of it, so like 35-40%, so you did have a good amount of people who were wearing their masks. And also, if you go to restaurants, if you have waiters and all those kind of things, the waiters actually always wear their masks. They also always, not all of them, but like sometimes have that face shield in addition to the mask. So they are taking it very, very seriously because they do want the tourists to return. Before you enter a place, before you enter a resort, before you enter a restaurant, before you enter any of these, with most of them, they do give you hand sanitizer, so your hands can be quite raw after an entire day of going in and out of stores, in and out of restaurants, in and out of resorts. They also spray down all your bags, so all your backpacks, suitcases, with sanitizer before entering the resort. I kid you not. I'm not really sure what that's supposed to be doing, but for people who are freaked out by this entire situation, yes, they take it extremely serious. And you also are required to step into a little sanitizing pad, and I'll blend it in right now before you enter, a restaurant, hotels, and obviously resorts and those kind of things. So I guess your soles of the feet or the shoes are being sanitized before entering anything. Now, it's not with every single store, but a lot of stores, a lot of restaurants do provide that, and they do ask you to step into that before you come in, just like they just give hand sanitizer on your hands. Actually, they don't even ask you regarding that anymore. It's like completely mandatory. However, I have been to stores who weren't doing that at all, so You know, I guess it's just up to the size of the store and how enforced it is, for sure. In some stores, I actually did end up wearing masks like all the time, such as the regular Waldo stores and those kind of things, which is like a regular drug pharmacy store. Once again, I'm personally doing it out of courtesy to others in this country, because I am visiting this foreign country and I do want to show that I am respecting them and their fears. For those people who, you know, have a different opinion on that, that's fine. You can wear your mask when you're outside all the time too. But I have to say, a month ago, so I was talking to different people about this, and they said a month ago they were actually severely fined. So all Mexicans, all tourists, they were severely fined for not wearing the mask on the street. Meaning for Mexicans, that would mean 3 days of jail. So up to 3 days of jail. And I think for the tourists, they wanted like $500 from them, but I'm not 100% sure. For some reason, a few weeks ago, or maybe a week before I arrived, they kind of just let it simmer out, so the police wasn't really enforcing it at all anymore. If you watch videos from July, August, September, you'll see way more vloggers, way more YouTubers wearing their masks, I think for that reason. But for some reason, like a few weeks before I arrived, so we're still at the end of October right now, they kind of just gave that up, and I'm not sure how it is in other locations, but I'll give you a report on that too. What I really think is completely nice and so different from the US, possibly also Europe, because I did talk to a few Europeans about it, was simply the fact that you are not judged if you do not wear your mask, or if you wear your mask. There's no judgment. There's no one yelling at you. There's no Karen or harassment person who's yelling at you, being like, hey, put your mask on. Don't you care for other people's lives or safety? You know, just like you would see in New York or in the US, those people who are trying to reinforce it, like those people who are policing you, basically, you don't see that here at all. All right, so if you are trying to get into a collective, if you are trying to get onto a tour or whatever, sure, yes, you do have people saying put your mask on, but they don't judge you. You know, I feel there's like literally no judgment, and that is a huge difference from the westernized countries that I've experienced so far and the ones that I lived in before I came on a vacation here in Tulum. So that was a huge difference energetically. It felt so much lighter and freer, and I have to say, here, being technically still in lockdown or whatever it is that the world is still in, it feels way more normal to be here than it ever did in my entire time in New York City and also upstate New York. So it just feels like life is returning back to normal. The social life is back, you know, to a normal. Like, I've met way more people here in the past 7 days than I did in the past 7 months in New York City, and that actually means a lot for everyone who knows how social New York usually is. I also wanted to mention that Mexico, and especially this area, is one of those spots that really does need tourism. So give Mexico all the tourism you can. I do feel they're taking a bunch of precautions. They're really, really eager to have things return back to normal, without much judgment, with making you feel very comfortable, being very outgoing and very social. And I have to give them a lot of kudos for that. It really just shows how, you know, even though these rules and restrictions are being enforced, how people are actually adhering to them and willing to adhere to them, meaning willing to play along with them. And what I've seen so far, I was actually positively surprised. So we as the people can have that power and can take our power back, that's for sure. I'll blend in a few more things of my time in Tulum, such as the fact that I thought it was funny that no restaurants actually provide straws. And then, of course, also the fact that the beach is actually quite far from Tulum town, so you either need to bike there or you need to figure out a different way, such as with a colectivo or a cab or something, but I think a colectivo doesn't go there directly. I'll also blend in some experiences that I've had in the Cenotes, on the tour, and all of that. But Tulum itself was pretty amazing. I highly, highly recommend it. I'll check out some other spots and give you a report on it. And until then, adios, hasta luego.